Hello and welcome to the TR Business video channel. I'm Charlotte Turner, Editorial Director for TR Business, and I'm here today with Barbara Barrett, who is the Executive Director of the Frontier Duty Free Association, acting on behalf of Canada's land border duty free businesses. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Barbara. It's a pleasure to have you on the channel.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for having me.
So during a press conference held in July, you addressed the members of the media and you revealed that you were calling on the Canadian government to save export businesses by granting them a specific relief package, a small percentage, I believe, of the $500 million tourism relief fund announced by the government last year. Have you received a response to this request as yet?
So since that press conference, the government has announced their allocation of that $500 million. They did allocate $400,000 to a tourism relief fund, where tourism businesses across Canada can apply for funding. At this moment, we are working with the government to ensure that our stores qualify to apply for that fund. Because as of now, we are considered retail as opposed to tourism. So we're working with we're working with ministerial offices to assure them that we qualify as tourism and should be able to apply for that. They did only one carve out from that tourism relief fund in specificity, and that was to Indigenous tourism businesses. And that was the only carve out that they did in terms of in specific relief funds.
Mm-hmm. And I understand it was 6.6 million you were asking for specifically. Is that correct?
That's correct, for our industry across Canada.
Yeah, sure. And referring to the challenge you face in terms of the classification of the businesses, it brings me on to my next question. In a meeting with MPs, you told TRBusiness that you had, in fact, had a letter co-signed by MPs, which was meant to be addressed to the Canada's Minister of Tourism, Melanie Joly. Can you tell us how that has been received?
So we have sent a letter into Joly's office, and we have also our Minister of Finance about our need for specific relief and or our need to be able to qualify for the Tourism Relief Fund. We're still working with them. We've had some good response in terms of their positivity towards us qualifying for the Tourism Relief Fund, but it's still an ongoing process.
Okay, I understand. And moving on to the pertinent question, I understand the border is going to open on the 9th of August. Is that right from the latest information?
Yes and no. It's never a straight answer. So it is opened partially on August 9th. They just announced last week. So there will be there will be northbound traffic allowed to come up. So Americans will be allowed, fully vaccinated Americans will be allowed to come up to Canada and cross back over. This is good news, but it's really just a crack in the border. It's not reopening of the border. It's important to clarify that it's only fully vaccinated Americans who are allowed to arrive at the border and cross over. And I'm not sure what the vaccination rates are this morning, but they're I think around the 50% range of Americans. So it's only those who qualify to be able to come over. Secondly, they require a PCR test 72 hours before they within the 72 hours before they arrive at the border, and then there will be some random selections of folks who will require a rapid test at the border. So there still are barriers to crossing over, and eventually we would like to see those barriers eliminated. It does cost a family of 4 coming across. it's $200 each. US to get those PCRs to come. So it's not insignificant. And on top of that, the Americans did not reciprocate at that time, which was disappointing and somewhat surprising. So the Canadians are not non-essential Canadians are not allowed to drive over the border into the U.S., which is very important to our business as we are export and we rely on folks going that direction. So it's really just a crack in the border at this time. It's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're happy, grateful to see that light, but at this moment it's still just a little pinprick of light.
Mm-hmm. It must be a huge blow to duty-free businesses, and I'm sure you've had their feedback already.
Yes, and it's really difficult to plan when we don't know what the answers are. Mm-hmm. And we've been asking for that throughout this, is to please keep us in the loop. Please allow us this time to plan. Please allow us to be able to plan, to get our inventory, to get our staff back. But it's been a month by month a situation since March 2020, and it's been very, very challenging.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings me on to one of my other questions about staff. Obviously, looking at the eventual reopening of stores, obviously staff may not be in the numbers that they need to be because of obviously the pandemic has hit businesses hard, and they may have had to, unfortunately, say farewell to a lot of members of staff. Do you foresee that businesses will be prepared once they are allowed to reopen?
We have had the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy throughout the pandemic here, which has allowed a number of our stores to keep staff on throughout this time period. But those are winding down now. The government has begun taking that measure away, and again we have not begun to recover yet. So there is the possibility that we will now start losing the ability for stores to hang on to staff. And given that the border's only partially open, they can't just, for some stores, it might not make sense to open yet until we're fully open, until we have that agreement with the United States for travelers to be able to go southbound. So it is a very challenging time for stores to know what to do in terms of bringing staff back yet, in terms of re-inventorying. Is there going to be enough business for them to justify doing that at this point? It's really difficult for them to calibrate that.
Mm-hmm. Especially as I would imagine that there'd be additional staff needed to adhere to the strict COVID, guidelines, 100%. These extra sanitization measures. So even more reason to have more people, more hands on deck, so to speak. Again, we've talked about there being a sort of a tiny speck of light at the end of the tunnel, but when that light perhaps grows a bit, and more stores are able to open fully, there could be additional problems in the border processing of travellers. Is that something that you can address in any way? You can try and prevent the sort of delays and long queues at the border?
I've had a number of meetings with the CBSA, which is our governing body, the Canadian Border Services Agency, and they're aware of the backlog that can create, and they are doing their best to staff up to mitigate that. But the fact of the matter is that when travelers arrive at the border, they're just going to have to be prepared, with their papers proving that they're vaccinated and that they've had this negative test, but also that they're just going to have to wait a little longer than they would have pre-pandemic. Mm-hmm.
And finally, I know it's difficult to say at this moment, but have you been given any indication about when a full reopening, reciprocal border opening might happen?
Well, they have extended it up to August 21st to this point. Our fingers are crossed, our toes are crossed that that they'll open it leading up to that. But it is it's a decision that's over my head. It lies at the White House in the United States, and we're hoping that they frankly do the right thing and allow Canadians who our vaccination rate is I think, top of the world right now. It doesn't make any scientific sense to not allow Canadians in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish you all the luck in your lobbying efforts and being the voice of those businesses. I'm sure they really appreciate all of your efforts that you're going to right now. And thank you again for speaking to us. And we look forward to catching up again with you soon.
Thank you, Charlotte. Really appreciate speaking with you today.
Thank you.